Hello everyone, this is Yohan, and today I've got another fun quilty project to share with you. So we're gonna make these awesome double oven mitts. I love oven mitts in any different shapes or form, but this kind is certainly my favorite. They are adorable and practical, especially for handling larger items such as casserole dish, cookie sheet, pizza stone, etc. I like that they not only protect my hands, but also my tummy area from the heat. The finished measurements are about 34.5 inches long by 7.5 inches wide. This one is the patchwork version, perfect to use up some of your favorite fabric scraps. And I also made the solid version, which is just as cute. You may go get the PDF cutting instructions at yohansewingstudio.com. The link is somewhere in the description box down below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and without further ado, let's get started. For the patchwork version, you will need to cut 4-inch squares in total of 32 pieces. If you work on the solid version, simply cut your pieces according to what the measurements called for that, and then follow the rest of the steps for assembling and binding. First, we're going to work on the patchwork for the hand pockets. Take 4 pieces of the 4-inch squares, arrange them to make a 4-patch panel, just like that. So I want to start by sewing the upper row, and we're going to use scant 1/4 inch seam allowance throughout piecing the patchwork. As usual, I like using my 1/4 inch presser foot to do my patchwork. Press the seams towards one side. Now we're going to sew the second row, and this time you want to alternate the pressing direction. So if you press the seams of the first row towards the right, you want to press the seams of the second row towards the left, or vice versa. This way you can easily nestle the seams when sewing them together. And of course, we're gonna press the seams as we go. So this time, it doesn't really matter to which direction you're gonna press the seams. So we're gonna name this 4-patch patchwork as panel A. Now take panel B, and then you're gonna sew that to the lower part of the patchwork. Press this as you go, and there you have it. So you wanna make 2 pieces of this. Now cut 2 identical rectangles for the lining of the hand pocket, or what we call here panel C. Next, we're going to work on the front side. Lay out 8 pieces of the 4-inch squares in 2 rows, just like that. And then we're going to sew this together. I like to sew 2 at a time. Of course, press this as you go and alternating the pressing direction. I am done sewing my patchwork, and we're going to call this panel D. Now we're going to sew panel E to the short sides of the panel D. And there you have it, guys. The front panel is done. Now we're going to work on the back side. So first we will do the patchwork panel. So you want to arrange 16 pieces of 4-inch squares in 2 rows, just like so. And then sew them together the same way we did before with the front panel. Alright, here is my patchwork panel already sewn together, and we're going to name this panel Panel F. Now take panel G and then sew them to the short sides of panel F. And the back panel is done and ready to go now. Lay the back panel with the wrong side facing up, just like that. And then take the insulated batting. I'm using Insul Bright here, but you can use any brand that you want, as long as it's created for the same purpose. So we're gonna lay this on top of the fabric, just like that. Make sure to align all the edges. Now take a piece of batting, make sure that it is a 100% cotton batting, and lay that on top of the insulated batting. Of course, aligning all the edges as well. Now take the front panel and lay that on top of the batting. The right side should be facing up. Now you can smooth everything out, make sure all the edges are aligned. And then we're gonna base this. So I prefer to use my safety pin to base all these layers. If you prefer to use different methods such as using basting spray, feel free to do so. Once you've done basting this, it's time to quilt. So you may quilt your panel in any design and method as desired. I chose the classic diamond shape design. So I'll lay my ruler on diagonal angle and then draw some straight lines about 1.5 inch apart using my air disappearing fabric marker. So I'm doing this all the way to the end, and then quilt using my walking presser foot, working from the center all the way to the side edges. Alright, here I've already sewn all the lines. Now I'm gonna draw the corresponding lines from the opposite angle with the same 1.5 inch distance to create that lovely diamond shapes. Alright, once you've done quilting your fabric at this point, if you want to, you can straighten up all the edges in case if there's any excess batting sticking out. Now we're gonna sandwich the hand pockets. Lay the lining fabric wrong side up, and this time we're gonna layer this only with the insulated batting. So let's lay this on top and then take the main fabric and lay that wrong side down. Again, smooth everything out and align all the edges. Once you've done that, base and quilt this as desired. And here I've got both of my pocket panels already quilted. Next, you want to grab a circular item, not too small or not too big. And we're gonna use this to curve all the corners. I'm using a painter's tape here. You can use a mug, a bowl, a cup, etc. Position that right on the corner, aligning all the edges, and then trace the curve at the corner and then cut. And we're gonna do this to all 4 corners and also the lower corners of the pockets. And this is how your pocket panel should look like. And this is how the main panel should look like. If you choose the solid version, you pretty much want to do everything the same way minus the patchwork. So simply cut all solid panels according to what the measurements called for. Now we're gonna bind the double oven mitts with bias binding. So I'm gonna make my own bias tape here. Now if you wish to, you can purchase a pre-made bias tape. Just make sure that the fabric is 100% cotton. Now if you wish to make your own bias tape following my tutorial, first you will need to cut a 16-inch square fabric. Now there are different ways on how to make bias tape, so if you have your favorite method, feel free to do so. Next we're gonna cut this fabric on diagonal angle, so take your ruler and lay that diagonally from one corner to the opposite corner, just like shown here, and then grab your rotary cutter and cut. So you should end up with 2 identical triangles. We're gonna extract 2-inch strips from these triangles. So grab your ruler again, and at the same angle from the longest point, you wanna measure 2 inches and then cut. Once you've done that, you wanna measure another 2 inches and cut. So continue cutting 2-inch strips until the end. And when you're done with this, you wanna cut the other triangle exactly the same way. And here I've already extracted my 2-inch strips from both triangles. If you want to, you can get rid of these 2 short strips. You don't have to use them, but I'm gonna use them because it's better to have more strip than less. So we're gonna join all of these strips together to make a continuous bias tape. So grab 2 strips. I like to pair the longer strip with the shorter strip for even distribution. Lay them in parallel position with the right sides facing up, and make sure that the edges of the strips are the same angle. Now take the lower strip and you want to cross this so that the angled edges of the strip are aligned. So your strips should look like this. Both the right sides of the strips should be touching each other. The upper strip should remain horizontal and the lower strip should be sitting vertically now. Also, it's very important to have about 1/4 inch of excess on both corners. See those little triangles sticking out there. Now let's stitch these strips in place with 1/4 inch seam allowance. When you sew, make sure to back stitch in the beginning and at the end of the stitching so that the bias tape will not be easily unraveled. Use a smaller stitch length, about 2 mm. Once you've done that, you want to cut all the excess corner triangles there so that everything will be even. And then press the seams open. And there you go, guys. Now we're gonna continue joining the strips in the same manner. This time the edges of my strip is facing the opposite direction than previously, which is totally fine. So make sure the other strip is also facing the same angle. And then we're gonna join them the same way like before. Alright guys, here I've already sewn all of my strips together. Now it's time to actually make the bias tape. There are 2 methods that I want to show you in this video. The first method is by using a bias tape maker. This is the quickest way and my favorite way of making bias tape. So you want to use the 1-inch or 25 mm bias tape maker. So if you measure this smaller opening, it should be 1 inch wide. Insert the end of the strip into the larger opening. and then grab it from the opposite end. Pull your fabric through. You may need to adjust it a little bit to get it going. So make sure that the side edges of the strip are facing each other, just like so. Now take your iron and then press. As you're pressing, you want to slide your bias tape and then continue on pressing until the end of the strip. If you don't have bias tape maker, no problem. First, you want to fold the strip in half, just like that, and then press. Open the fold and then fold the long sides towards the center fold and then press. And that's it. Now we've got a 1-inch single fold bias tape. So just on a side note here, if you wish to make double fold bias tape, you simply fold this in half and then press. That will give you 1/2 inch double fold bias tape. Okay, first we're gonna bind the top edges of the hand pocket. Cut a piece of bias tape, just enough to bind the top edges, about 8 inches. Open one of the fold of the bias tape and then position that on the top edges of the pocket panel, aligning the raw edges. And then we're gonna stitch this in place with 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Once you've done that, fold the remaining binding towards the wrong side. Keep the binding folded though, so that the binding is now hugging the raw edges of the pocket panel. Clip to secure this in place and then go ahead and finish the binding. So I prefer to finish my binding with hand stitching, just like the usual, for a nicer look, but feel free to use sewing machine if that's what you prefer. Once you've done that, bind the other pocket panel exactly the same way. Now with the front side of the main panel facing up, position the pocket panel on both ends of the main panel, just like shown here, and then clip to secure them in place. Now we're ready to bind the oven mitts. This is quite a straightforward procedure. We're gonna start attaching the binding somewhere at the center long side of the main panel. So just like before, you wanna open one of the fold of the bias tape and then align the raw edges of the binding with the raw edges of the oven mitts and then clip. When you start sewing, leave about 2 to 3 inches of tail from the beginning of the binding there, because we need that extra fabric for the overlapping later. So with 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, I highly recommend to use your walking presser foot since you're going to be dealing with a lot of bulk here. As you are approaching the curved corner, since we're using bias tape here, you shouldn't have a problem on laying the tape flat since bias tape has some kind of stretch to it. So you may want to slow down a little bit and readjust your fabric if necessary. Stop sewing about 5 inches away from the start. Overlap the strip by 1/2 inch. Here I've got my ruler and I am measuring 1/2 inch from the starting strip and then cut. Now we're gonna join these strips together. So first I like to pinch the fabric underneath here and then clip. This will make it easier to move the strips. Now lay the strips right sides together, open the fold all the way, just like that. And then go to your machine and stitch this in place with 1/2 inch seam allowance. Once you've done sewing, you wanna remove the clip, finger press the seams open, and then continue and finish the stitching. Once you've attached the binding strip, we're gonna trim off the seam allowances of the curved area around the corners. So grab your scissors and then trim off the seam allowances about 1/4 inch away. Be careful not to cut through the stitches, of course. And you wanna cut only the fabrics of the main panel, not the binding, so leave the binding alone. This will help relax the tension around the curve so that later on you can easily turn the binding to the back and finish it up smoothly. Now let's turn the binding to the back side, wrapping the raw edges and then clip to secure them temporarily, and then finish the binding with hand stitching, performing slip stitches or as desired. And that's pretty much it, guys, for this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching and I hope you enjoyed this and will give this project a try. And until next time, goodbye.